back to another episode of Resiliency Gardening. I'm Corey Ekman, your homesteading graduate assistant at SRU's McCoskey Center. And in today's episode, I want to give you an overview about composting. And so what is composting, and how can you make compost in your backyard? So stay tuned and find out. Now before we dive any deeper into composting, I wanted to take a moment and talk about food waste. Food waste is a huge issue here in America. During a Yale University study, they actually found on average that a typical American will throw away 2,000 pounds of organic waste per year. And so that's a huge number that we actually need to be mindful of, and that each homestead can take steps into minimizing that waste. And one of those ways that you can minimize it is through composting. And so today I want to show you by making a meal of mine for dinner tonight. I'm going to do a cauliflower avocado taco dinner, so stay tuned. Oh yeah, that's right. Cauliflower is an organic material. I shouldn't throw the scraps in the trash. So this is my indoor compost bin, which is perfect for a day's worth of organic waste. It's just the right size to fit everything that my household makes into it. And so after dinner, I take this out and I dump this into my larger compost system, which will be incorporated and made into soil. And so let's go check that out. So welcome to my compost bin. As you can see, I put in my compost off to the left, or like my organic material that I had just cut up inside. I put it off to the left, and then off to the right is going to be where my usable soil is. And so that's where I'm going to transfer soil from one side into the other when it's more usable, more decomposed and broken down. As you can see, my compost bin has a little lever that helps keep this heavy lid up, but you can also see that there's holes drilled into it, as well as there are holes all around the sides that allow for air and water to penetrate into the compost bin. This helps further break down any materials that you had input into your compost bin a little bit faster. And also those smaller holes, and then these holes have chicken wire to keep any critters out, because I do live really close around farmlands. And so I'll bring you up close so you can actually look in for what I have in my compost bin. So there are things you can identify on the left side still. You can see I have onions, I have a couple tomatoes, and then on the right side I only have grass and things that are growing in there right now. I do not have enough soil in which I could move to that side yet. I will not make enough soil in my small household with me and just my boyfriend to create that much soil within this season. But by next season I'll be able to utilize this soil or compost over here into next season's garden. So as you can see, I have a pretty functional compost bin, but I do have some cons with it. And so with that being said, I do need to apologize to my boyfriend and his dad, because they did build this for me due to my instructions. So none to your guys' fault. So this compost bin, although I do have ventilation holes and ways to get water and air through, I would choose to do it with pallets, or made by pallets, or at least put in more holes, or even make it out of just chicken wire, so then I can have that much more air and water permeate through it. With this, although I got this because my own father had a project in which this plyboard or whatever it is, no longer served him justice, I got to take it on. And so definitely free materials are always good, but I know for a healthy compost, I do want to have plenty of ventilation. Another con is actually that it is sort of an eyesore, and so if my neighbors or anything did have an issue with it, I would probably look more into something that I could buy from the store, from a local hardware store, because a lot of times they do carry compost bins if you look, and pretty inexpensively. But again, mine was free, so of course I couldn't pass it up because I'm a broke college kid, so there's that. So now that we know all the pros and cons to my particular compost bin, let's head inside and find out what compost really is. Let's take a moment and recap a few things that we learned about compost. The first thing we learned is that composting is a way in which that we can all reduce our organic waste, because instead of throwing a banana peel away into a trash can that will then create methane emissions in a landfill, when you put that banana peel into a compost system, it actually decomposes and turns into a soil carbon in which your plants in your garden will love in the coming season. Next, we learned that all that compost really is just broken down organic material that helps to supplement your soil with the microbes and nutrients that it creates. Another key item we learned is that compost bins can be made out of scrap materials that you have maybe around your shed or in your barn. And so you can pretty much make a compost system out of anything, and if not, you can buy them pre-built from the store. And finally, a good compost bin needs proper ventilation for both air and water. On the next few slides, I've created a list of things that you can and cannot compost, as well as some of the exceptions to this rule. And so feel free to pause the video at any time. In today's final thought, I wanted to give you a little excerpt of a book that I've been reading from Will Bunzall, and he is a man that lives in Maine, and so his gardening season is actually shorter than ours, I would argue, and he's totally vegan, he's an older gentleman, and he's really funny in his book, and I've really taken a liking to this book. It's called The Essential Guide to Radical Self-Reliant Gardening. Again, I've taken a lot of tips from him over the last few months on how to garden organically, and he has really cool ideas. And the excerpt in here, he has a chapter on composting, and it goes, "Ultimately, whether sooner or later, despite your clever ploys and your stupid blunders, you will end up with compost. It's really quite hard to prevent. It's just a question of how long it takes and how valuable is the finished product." So with that being said, and everything that we learned in today's video, I hope that composting is something that you can start doing at your homestead. Just a reminder that whatever you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And so be sure to put in organic material and so you get that organic compost out of it to use in your garden beds. And also stay tuned for June's newsletter that'll be coming out in the coming weeks, in which I discuss in even further depth of different ways that you can compost at your home and see what works best for you. And so I go from windrow composting that involves almost the entire community, as well as down to just if you live in like an apartment style. A lot of people will take on vermicomposting, which has to do with worms decomposing the organic material in these smaller inputs if you don't have any land. So this would be something that you can actually do inside, which is really cool. And yeah, as always, thank you for watching again, and I will see you in a couple weeks.
I have worked upon the hillsides where the pines sing in the wind, where the renters lived before me and the miners before them.